Yellowstone and 1883. Love it or hate it, the Taylor Sheridan franchise has spurred an interest in the West, both modern and historical. WWHA was privileged to interview Sidney Thompson, author of the Bass Reeves Trilogy, on which Taylor Sheridan based his script for 1883, The Bass Reeves Story. Listen to Sidney, a history teacher at Texas Christian University, talk about his research, writing, and bringing the Bass Reeves Story to a public hungry for more on the Wild West.
Hi, I'm Sidney Thompson. I'm an author of historical fiction. I have 3 novels about Bass Reeves. It's a trilogy of historical fiction about the life. The first comprehensive narrative about the legendary Deputy U.S. Marshal Bass Reeves, my personal hero. He has lived in my head for the last 12 years once I learned who he was. In 2010, I was watching CNN and Morgan Freeman was on, and I tuned in because I like Morgan Freeman, big fan. And at the end of his interview, he was promoting a film, I don't remember which, but at the end of the interview, he was asked what his dream role would be. And he started talking about this man people knew very little about. The greatest lawman of the Wild West, an African American. And he said, but nobody's ever really done them. He ultimately was giving a clarion call for a story because he wanted to play Bass Reeves. And as a writer, I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, okay, so you want to play him? Maybe I should write him. I don't know. So I looked online and I found Art T. Burton's Black Gun Silver Star, which is a wonderful compilation of records, court documents, newspaper stories, interviews. Art Burton had basically lived his research, had been studying Bass Reeves for decades. That book inspired me, all the rich research, all the material, and it made me want to piece the material together to tell a story. I wanted to live the story. I really wanted to understand how this man came to be. How did this African American badass in the 1870s and 80s and 90s on, how did he accomplish what he did? Arrest over 3,000 outlaws, kill at least 14 men in the line of duty, maybe more, but at least 14. And he only suffered 1 injury in a career that lasted 32 years, 30 as a federal officer, 2 as a beat cop in Muskogee. 32 years, 1 injury, and this is after surviving point-blank gunfights. I mean, the outlaws were feet, if not inches away at sometimes. So I wanted to know how this man could have possibly achieved what he did while growing up as an enslaved person, because everything I knew about American literature and history was that there weren't prominent African Americans in a position of authority that early. In 1875, he became a deputy marshal. What prepared him to take on that life? Why did people trust him? Like Isaac Parker. And I just wanted to examine his life that led up to that great career. So I started research, obviously, for years before I could really write much. And for the last 12 years, I've been doing research and then writing this trilogy. The first book is Follow the Angels, Follow the Doves. That's the Bass Reeves Trilogy, Book 1. And that focuses on his early life, from his birth, from 1838 until 1862, during the Civil War after the Battle of Pea Ridge in northern Arkansas, when he is the body servant of his master, George Robertson Reeves, who becomes the Speaker of the House in the Texas State House of Representatives. What kind of life did he live as a slave? As someone who is attending an officer, his master, who was an officer in the 11th Texas Cavalry, what was he exposed to? What was he learning? Now, we have facts, we have history that he was there in battles with his master, George Reeves. And we have the history about what happened in the battles, but we don't have the history about Bass Reeves' psychology, what he experienced, what he thought, what he learned. How did he take what he learned and apply it to his years as a lawman? How did he take his experiences as an enslaved youth in Arkansas and in Texas and apply those lessons to his career as a lawman? So that's why I thought I had to write fictional history, this historical fiction, the Bass Reeves Trilogy. So I thought I would share a little bit from each of my first two books. The first one I mentioned was Follow the Angels, Follow the Doves, and part two picks up after the Civil War, when he's at the peak of his career as a lawman in 1883, 1884, in Hell on the Border. Hell on the Border is the nickname for the federal jail in Fort Smith, Arkansas, where he worked, where Bass Reeves worked as a deputy marshal. The third book is complete. It's called The Forsaken and the Dead, and it is coming out next fall, the fall of 2023, when coincidentally Taylor Sheridan's Bass Reeves miniseries is due to air. The Yellowstone 1883 director will be directing the pilot of the Bass Reeves miniseries, and it will be based, the miniseries will be based on my books, my trilogy, the Bass Reeves Trilogy, which I am so very proud of for the main reason. When I got into this in the first place so many years ago, when I was living in Alabama, before I decided to move to Texas to live in Bass Reeves's backyard so I could absorb the landscape, meet people that know the area well, that can share history with me, that would allow me to take trips into Oklahoma, former Indian Territory or Oklahoma Territory, and browse around Fort Smith, Arkansas, and Van Buren. When I started this project, my hope was that I would honor this great man and help elevate his stature where it needs to be, where it should have been all along. He's been whitewashed from history for over 100 years, and I wanted to do my part to help right a wrong. When I heard Morgan Freeman, it felt like it was almost meant to be, like, okay, now I have this responsibility to tell a story now that I know about the story. I thought, well, Am I the right person to tell it? Well, I'm the person who cares, so maybe I am the right person to tell it. When I found out about this man, I thought, how in the world is he not a household name? And that was my ultimate goal. You know, that's the biggest goal I could think of, is I would like to do my part to help make Bass Reeves a household name. Not all on my own. Art Burton and others like Ernest Marsh, they're doing their parts. I wanted to do my part. And I'm proud to say that maybe, just maybe, Bass Reeves will become a household name. Thanks to Taylor Sheridan. His name is synonymous with TV excellence because of Yellowstone in 1883. And 101 Studios, Paramount Plus, with Taylor Sheridan on board and David Oyelowo, the English actor who wants to play Bass Reeves himself. They want to do a legitimate, accurate portrayal of Bass Reeves, something that's at times, that goes according to history, and if it ever strays from history, that it at least has the spirit and presents the essence of who the man was and honors him the way he should be honored. And with the miniseries, I'm hoping that many more people will be investigating the history, will be inspired to open the history books. That's what I hope for my own books. I've had to rely on many books and archival research. I went back to school to get my PhD, and an early version of these books was my dissertation. So, to go back, so who should tell his story after 100 years? And I'm thinking, well, if I'm dedicated enough to uproot my family, my children, move to Texas and get my doctorate and learn more about the 19th century African American narratives, and that includes research in Civil War and guns and frontier justice, and it's just a can of worms. I had no idea how many things I was going to have to research, but I feel like I'm going to put my work out there and be proud of it. I've done the best I could do, and I didn't do it quickly, that's for sure. I didn't take shortcuts. In fact, I was forced to be patient. My first agent read Follow the Angels, Follow the Doves, and a prominent New York agent, I'll go ahead and share this for this is on YouTube, but I won't say names, but she said, I can't represent this book because Bass Reeves there's too much religion in the book. And it's like, well, just to give you a glimpse into my thinking as a fiction writer, my thought was, well, Bass Reeves was a very faithful man. He believed he was an instrument of God, and I believe, without a doubt, that gave him the gravitas to walk through the valley of the shadow of death, to be the badass that he was, to be calm under pressure, even when tables turned and he was ambushed. He was calm, and always believed that he could find a way to turn the tables, that it would come to him, that he was anointed by God. God was on his side. I was not going to take religion out of my book. So there's history in my books, but maybe in not ways sometimes that's easy to tell. I had to make him a faithful man, and you'll see many references to faith, so you understand his psychology, why he makes the decisions he makes in his life, and how his mistakes affect him, because he would have been regretful as a Christian. And so that is how we arrive really at the present moment. So how did I get involved with the Yellowstone 1883 people? So they had a script originally that had no relationship to my work, and they got it approved through Viacom and Paramount Plus to make a miniseries on Bass Reeves. But there was a problem. They found issues with the script and decided they needed to throw it out. That it wasn't entertaining enough. That maybe it read too much like kind of stilted history, and it wouldn't play well, in front of the camera. So they got rid of all the writers and hired a new staff, and the new showrunner told me that he had to scramble. Who's got a story out there about Bass Reeves that could serve as the basis for our miniseries? He did a little homework, found my books, ordered them, read them, loved them, and contacted my publisher in short order. And here we are a few months later. So they bought the rights to my books, and they're in the process now of writing the episodes, the scripts for each episode, and they have hired me to serve as a creative consultant to verify history and to verify the accuracy of Bass Reeves. And I have to say, so far, that I can say thumbs up on their willingness and dedication to history. The first question I was asked, the first concern about the pilot, and it includes a battle that takes place that Bass Reeves witnessed, the Battle of Pea Ridge. And I'm told that the director, Taylor Sheridan, his first concern was, how many extras will I need for this battle? I want to know, please find out, how many soldiers, how many men would have been in this location where this scene is going to take place, or in this location, and in this location. So I had to go back to my history and give them definitive numbers. So so far, so good. I'm delighted and proud that I'm working with people who do care about the truth. Sometimes the truth is through the facts. Sometimes you have to do your best to represent the truth when the facts aren't even present. And one reason why I saw that I should write the Bass Reeves story as fiction as opposed to nonfiction, it wasn't only I wanted to know his psychology and get inside his mind, but there's so many gaps in his story that I thought an historian is going to be a fiction writer anyway to try to fill in those gaps. So much of his youth is a gap. We know he was a slave, born in Van Buren, right outside of Van Buren, Arkansas. And we know he moved to Texas later, right outside or not far from Paris, Texas. And we know that he later served as a body servant and attended George Reeves to the Civil War. We know he went around before that and participated in turkey shoots and was so good he was banned. Obviously after humiliating a lot of white, participants. So we know that, but you gotta have more information. You can't write a chapter or 2 chapters or 3 chapters based only on that. I wanted to do some research and find out more about these turkey shoots, how the songs slaves sang at that time, why, how they had codes in there to communicate with each other that the master wouldn't recognize, wouldn't understand. And so I could recreate his life on a plantation for a while so that we can understand how that life, those experiences could have possibly benefited him later. We know he was great with the guns and fearless. You don't just magically become that. So I felt like I needed to use my creativity to recreate what we knew to be true. And I'd like to share a little bit of that so you can see how I'm blending fiction and history. So from my first book, Follow the Angels, Follow the Doves, this is when he shoots a gun for the first time. In a stony meadow on the north side of the plantation, Master Reeves dismounted his palomino and removed his straw hat, which Bass had never seen him wear before that day, and rightfully so, since it fit him a little small, even resting back on his head. "Hang this on that birch there," he told Bass, and Bass, having already dismounted from his sorrel, took the hat and worked his way across the sun-soaked meadow 50 feet to a birch standing alone by a stream. The birch was no bigger round than Bass's own arm, maybe smaller if Bass flexed. "I never liked that hat. Years ago when I worked for the state legislature in Little Rock, a friend gave it to me as a joke. His way of congratulating me for a motion I'd gotten passed, despite his efforts to the contrary. I suppose we were friends at the time. Anyway," he said, "I was big-headed. How you like that? I may not be the best shot, but today I will be, by Jove." Master Reeves steadily talked to Bass as Bass broke off the lowest limb, hung the hat on the jagged stub, the red band making a perfect bullseye, and walked back. Master Reeves demonstrated the loading of the longer, heavier, older, darker weapon, an 1842 smoothbore. He explained the percussion cap, the paper cartridge, the ramrod. Then he leveled the musket with the butt plate pressed against his shoulder, pulled back the hammer and aimed. "Always aim the muzzle, the end of the gun there, a hair high, because the ball will drift down a hair over space. And always take a breath first. Hold still." He squeezed the trigger, and hiding quail flushed from the edges of the meadow. With the smell of mercury fulminate rising to their nostrils, Bass and Master Reeves watched the hat swing like a pendulum, the .69 caliber lead ball having nicked the brim. "Ha!" Master Reeves said. "Told you I'd get it. Your turn now, and don't be scared. There's nothing to be afraid of." Bass proceeded to load the musket how Master Reeves had demonstrated, and Master Reeves nodded. That's right, he'd say. But Bass was slow to level the musket, unsure if he should brace it against his left shoulder or right. "Does it matter, Master Reeves, which side I shoot on?" "Well, boy, are you right-handed or left-handed?" Bass looked at his hands and shook his head. "When you hold your fork to eat," Master Reeves said, "which hand do you use?" Bass shrugged. "Whatever one's closer." "Then I guess it doesn't matter. Give it a try both ways." "Yes, sir, Master." Bass leveled the musket against his right shoulder to be like Master Reeves and cocked the hammer back. "Remember, aim a hair high," Master Reeves told him, "and hold steady. Easy does it." Bass stared at the hat until the flat circle of woven straw coalesced into clear view, like the coconut cake he had recently watched his mother bake and ice in the Reeves' kitchen. He lowered the muzzle even with the top of the circle and took a breath. He held still. When the percussion cap cracked, Bass took his eyes off the target, and Master Reeves struck up a ballyhoo like no other white person Bass had ever heard, more like a drunken Negro on a Saturday night. "You did it, son," Master Reeves said. He clapped Bass on the back. "Look at that." Bass had hit the center of the hat's crown, a perfectly round black blot, and all that straw white. as if he'd poked a red-hot punch rod through it. And you didn't even knock that blasted hat from its roost. It was that clean of a shot. My goodness, boy, you're quite the crackerjack. Bass smiled. He was accustomed to success, but not praise from a man as important as Bass Reeves. And I'll stop there. I just wanted to give you a flavor that includes, all right, so I'm weaving in history that's accurate about his relationship with his father, but it's history you might not recognize. It's the bond that he had with his first master, William Reeves, who seemed to be a kinder, gentler man than his son, George Reeves. George Reeves is one that I discovered from our research. Got into trouble as an officer in the Civil War for being insubordinate and was punished. He had a history of drunkenness. So, all right, Bass Reeves is somebody who's noble, appreciated rules and laws. So, but here I wanted to show that there's a gentleness, there's some camaraderie between him and William Reeves. As an enslaved young man, he learned to sing, or learned to enjoy singing, and turned to it not just for pleasure, but to calm his nerves. And I incorporate some songs in the first book that he sings as a boy. You know, songs about outlaws usually, which made his mother Pearlie. I've seen her name, spelled and written out different ways. But she was afraid he was going to grow up and be an outlaw. And because of his fascination with outlaws. And I understand her concern, but I think what his fascination really was justice. I would like to share something that's in my second book, Hell on the Border, which takes place when Bass Reeves is deputy marshal. And when he went into Indian Territory, when he left Fort Smith, Arkansas, he crossed over the border, he said it just inevitably would be true. He thought it must be a sign from God that this is bad news. Bad news will come. There are gray skies, it's about to rain, and it always rains, Bass Reeves said. It always poured down when he left the security of civilization, so to speak, of Fort Smith and went into Indian Territory that was lawless. And this is what Bass Reeves, there's a line here taken from a news story when he said that he always said, "Get ready for bad weather, boys." And he would say this to his crew, his possemen and his cook. "Do you hear my steed's hooves? Do you see the clouds rain? Jim Webb, are you listening? I've got a writ bears your name. Jim Webb, why are you running again? Don't you know running free without a right is one devil of a sin? So heed this warning, old friend, if you decide once more to shoot. We will make the same money just by bringing back your boots." I'm proud to be a representative of Bass Reeves. Just the other day, I received at the Bass and Bell Film Festival in Muskogee, Oklahoma, I received an honor, an award I'm proud of, Bass Reeves Legacy Trailblazer Award, by helping to preserve the history and inspire people to read more history. Thank you.